We're going back to 1980, a pivotal year when President Jimmy Carter, yes, that Jimmy Carter, decided to shake things up. He signed the Motor Carrier Act, a piece of legislation that completely transformed the trucking industry. Now, before 1980, the trucking industry wasn't exactly a free-for-all. It was a time when the government had a firm grip on the wheel, dictating the routes, rates, and even the cargo that could be transported. This era was marked by stringent regulations and a lack of flexibility for the trucking companies and drivers alike. Imagine this: a government agency, the Interstate Commerce Commission, or ICC, calling the shots on everything. Established in 1887, the ICC was initially created to regulate the railroads, but by the mid-20th century, its reach extended to the trucking industry. The ICC had the authority to approve or deny routes, set freight rates, and even determine the types of goods that could be transported. Before we continue, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I pour my heart into these videos, working 8 to 10 hours every day to bring you the best content possible. Your support means everything to me, and hitting that 1,000 subscriber milestone would be a huge motivation to keep creating. They decided who could transport what, where they could go, and even how much they could charge. Talk about a killjoy. This level of control meant that trucking companies had to jump through numerous hoops just to operate. The process of getting approval for new routes or rate changes was often slow and cumbersome, stifling innovation and competition. This system meant steady work for truckers, many of whom were part of powerful unions. These unions played a significant role in negotiating wages, benefits, and working conditions for their members. The stability provided by the ICC's regulations ensured that truckers had consistent employment and could rely on a predictable income. They had decent wages, benefits, the whole 9 yards. Unionized truckers enjoyed a level of job security that was rare in other industries. They had access to health insurance, retirement plans, and other benefits that made the job attractive despite its challenges. This sense of security extended to their families, who could count on a stable household income. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. The rigid regulations imposed by the ICC also meant that truckers had little room for flexibility. They had to adhere to strict schedules and routes, which could be particularly challenging during adverse weather conditions or mechanical breakdowns. The lack of competition also meant that there was little incentive for companies to improve their services or invest in better equipment. This tight control stifled competition, leading to higher prices for everyone. Consumers felt the pinch as the cost of goods transported by truck was often inflated due to the lack of competitive pricing. This was particularly evident in smaller towns and rural areas, where options for purchasing goods were limited, and prices were higher as a result. It was like trying to buy a new telly from a bloke who had the only shop in town. The lack of competition meant that consumers had little choice but to pay the asking price, no matter how high. This situation created a sense of frustration and helplessness among consumers, who had no alternative but to accept the status quo. The days of the iron grip were a double-edged sword, providing stability for some while creating challenges for many others. Enter the Motor Carrier Act of 1980. This landmark legislation was a game-changer for the trucking industry in the United States. Before this act, the industry was heavily regulated by the Interstate Commerce Commission, or ICC, which controlled everything from routes to rates. The Motor Carrier Act of 1980 aimed to deregulate the industry, fostering competition and innovation. This act was like a breath of fresh air, blowing away the cobwebs of the old system. It allowed trucking companies more freedom to operate, which in turn led to more efficient and cost-effective services. The act was designed to reduce the red tape that had been stifling the industry for decades. No more Mr. ICC telling everyone what to do. The ICC had been the gatekeeper, making it difficult for new companies to enter the market. With the new act, the barriers to entry were significantly lowered, allowing for a more dynamic and competitive environment. The act made it easier for new trucking companies to set up shop, injecting some much-needed competition into the market. This influx of new players helped to drive down costs and improve service quality, benefiting consumers and businesses alike. Companies were now free to set their own prices, within reason, of course. This flexibility allowed them to be more responsive to market demands and customer needs. It also encouraged innovation in pricing strategies, leading to more competitive rates and better deals for shippers. This meant no more fixed rates dictated by the government. Trucking companies could negotiate rates directly with their customers, leading to more tailored and efficient services. This change was a significant shift from the rigid, one-size-fits-all approach that had previously dominated the industry. It was a free market, baby. The Motor Carrier Act of 1980 unleashed the entrepreneurial spirit of the trucking industry, paving the way for a more vibrant and competitive market. This transformation not only benefited the industry, but also had a positive impact on the broader economy, making goods more affordable and accessible for everyone. The impact was immediate. Suddenly, everyone and their dog wanted a piece of the trucking pie. The number of trucking companies doubled in the decade following the act. Competition was fierce, pushing companies to become more efficient and offer better services. It wasn't just about numbers, though. The cost of running a trucking business plummeted. Operating costs per mile for those big rigs dropped significantly. It was a win for the companies, but as we'll see, not everyone shared in the spoils. Here's where the story takes a bit of a turn. The open road, once a symbol of freedom and opportunity, began to feel more like a burden for many truckers. The long hours, the endless miles, and the solitude started to weigh heavily on their minds and bodies. While the Motor Carrier Act was a boon for the trucking industry as a whole, it wasn't all rosy for the people behind the wheel. The deregulation led to an influx of new trucking companies, which increased competition. This competition, while good for the market, had some unintended consequences for the drivers. Remember those strong unions and decent wages? They were the backbone of the trucking industry, ensuring that drivers were fairly compensated for their hard work. Unions provided a sense of security and community, a safety net for the drivers. Well, they took a hit. The increased competition meant that companies were looking for ways to cut costs, and unfortunately, the drivers were the ones who felt the brunt of these cost-cutting measures. Union power began to wane, and with it, the protections and benefits that drivers had come to rely on. With increased competition came downward pressure on wages. Companies were now able to hire non-union drivers at lower wages, which forced unionized drivers to accept lower pay just to keep their jobs. The once lucrative profession of truck driving was becoming less and less attractive. Drivers, especially those who were unionized, saw their earning power shrink. The paychecks that once provided a comfortable living were now barely enough to make ends meet. Many drivers found themselves working longer hours for less pay, just to keep up with their financial obligations. Benefits were cut, and job security became a thing of the past. Health insurance, retirement plans, and other benefits that were once standard for unionized drivers were now being slashed. The uncertainty of the job market left many drivers feeling anxious about their future. It was a tough pill to swallow for many truckers who felt like they were being left behind. The camaraderie and sense of purpose that once defined the profession were fading away. The road ahead seemed uncertain, and many drivers were left wondering if the sacrifices they were making were worth it. Now, let's talk about the winners. Remember those high prices under the old system? Well, they went the way of the dodo. The Motor Carrier Act led to a significant drop in shipping costs, which meant lower prices for everything from that new telly to your weekly shop. This was a win for consumers who enjoyed greater choice and affordability. It was also a boon for big businesses who could now move their goods around the country more efficiently than ever before. So there you have it. The Motor Carrier Act was a game changer. It unleashed competition, drove down prices, and revolutionized the way goods are transported in America. But it's a story of two halves. Consumers and big businesses emerged as clear winners. But for many truckers, the act marked the beginning of a long and difficult journey. Wages stagnated, benefits were cut, and the once powerful unions lost their grip. Was the Motor Carrier Act the right decision? It's a question that still sparks debate today. On the one hand, it's hard to argue with the benefits for consumers and the overall efficiency of the industry. But on the other hand, The human cost of deregulation is undeniable. It's a classic case of weighing economic progress against the well-being of workers. It's a debate that continues to rage on in many industries, not just trucking. So where do we go from here? The Motor Carrier Act is here to stay, but the challenges faced by truck drivers remain. Long hours, stagnant wages, and a lack of job security are all issues that need to be addressed. Finding a way to balance the economic benefits of a deregulated trucking industry with the needs of the hard-working men and women who keep it moving is the challenge of our time. That's it from me. Drive safe.